Hey everyone, so recently we've spent some time teaching you how to deal with ranged champions in the top lane. Much of these guides featured Hector absolutely stomping his opponent despite being the one who should be getting bullied, because he exploits mistakes that most players tend to make. This time, we're going to jump into a game from former SKT top laner thal, who's currently rank 1 on the Korean server. He'll be playing a melee champion, Sett, into the extreme example of a ranged bully, Kalista. In this guide, you'll have plenty of opportunities to show off your knowledge, as we'll be asking you a bunch of questions along the way. If you've been sticking to our program, we hope you'll be able to answer them all correctly. Of course, regardless of what champion you play, you'll learn a bunch about how to play both sides of the ranged versus melee matchup. But before we jump into that, I'm sure that most of you have heard by now that Riot is releasing a new tactical FPS game called Valorant. Well, we have some exciting news for you. We here at skillcapped have just launched a brand new YouTube channel with one goal in mind: helping you become a better Valorant player. That's not all though. A lot of the guides that we'll be releasing are focused on skills that transfer over to other FPS games and even League of Legends, such as how to improve your mouse accuracy. Valorant has a ton of hype right now, having broken Twitch viewership records and has even recently launched ranked in the closed beta. Now's the best chance to stay ahead of the competition, so click the link in the description below and subscribe to our new channel. It's a great way to show your love and support for what we do here at skillcapped. With that said, let's jump back into it. Okay, entering right into the game, thal will be playing Sett into Kalista. Right off the bat, what do you think is the most important thing thal did in Champion Select and why? If you recalled that you should take Second Wind, you would be correct. Sett is not a champion who runs Corrupting Potion, so he opted to run the Doran's Shield Second Wind combination to mitigate a lot of the auto attack damage that's going to be coming his way every time he goes for a last hit. And don't think that we're playing around. Question 2 is coming up. Notice how thal hasn't leveled an ability yet. You always want to wait to level your abilities based on what you need. With the information given so far, what do you think he should skill at levels 1 and 2? E and Q were the correct answers here. His Elise has started bot side. While W is nice in the ranged matchup, it doesn't have the most chase down potential when setting up ganks. E and Q would give him the most tools at level 2 for the incoming gank. Awesome, with this game plan in mind, he waits for the creeps to get low and then skills W. So what gives here? Are we reading too much into this, or was there a subtle reason why he'd skill W here over the initial game plan we had set in place? If you changed your answer midway through because we saw bot lane leash, you'd be correct. Remember, this is high challenger Korean solo queue. People kind of know how to play at this elo. Lee is starting at his red so that he can path topside along with Elise. It's fairly obvious that Kalista will want to play super aggressively. Thus, Lee for sure knows that he needs to be there to protect her from the level 3 Elise gank. This is mostly to highlight how important it is to wait on skilling your abilities. On certain champions, it matters a lot. Thal would probably skill W 90% of the time in this lane, but there is the off chance that Lee starts at blue, so having the potential to go E and Q at level 2 is super valuable. Now that it's clear that he won't be able to get a gank and he's in a losing matchup, thal just chills. When in situations like this, thal can fall back to a game plan based on the 0 CS Nasus challenge that we did a while back. If you recall, ranged minions are a lot less valuable than melee ones. When you can't walk up for every creep, it's okay to give up the casters and perhaps take a bit of damage last hitting the melee ones. That's all thal has done here until the wave crashes into his tower. When it finally does, we see Elise being invaded near her Krugs. Thal can get there before Kalista can due to his proximity to the fight. Listen to this question carefully. Would you go to the fight? Then, what do you think thal would do, and why? Take your time and pause if you need to. Alright, this question directly highlights why we don't always analyze pro players here at skillcapped. We'd recommend that you absolutely never collapse here. So many things can go wrong, and there's the potential to miss a huge amount of farm to the tower. Yet, thal goes anyways and hard commits to the fight. He ends up losing a ton of health for very little payoff. Whenever we watch one of our smurfs play the melee versus range matchup in low elo, they eventually just prey on one of their countless mistakes and kill them. In this matchup, thal is super reliant on Elise ganks to set him up. To him, it's probably very important that she's ahead of Lee Sin and capable of having more map pressure. It's highly unlikely that he solo kills this challenger Kalista unless she makes a very uncharacteristic mistake which he just can't rely on. Unfortunately for him, helping Elise didn't have much payoff, so he shamefully walks back to the tower to catch some CS before being brutally forced to recall by Kalista's unfair pressure. After recalling, what do you think thal should do next? Walk back to lane or use his teleport? Don't worry, this one wasn't a trick question. Just making sure you remember that if the wave is pushing away from you, that it's best to teleport back so you don't miss too much farm. Anyway, after recalling and TPing back to lane, we see thal is able to pick up the odd last hit before he's back to being zoned by the extremely balanced Kalista. Our next question is a bit different. With the wave about to be frozen against him, in a matchup that he can't do much in, what do you think thal's mindset should be at the moment? Again, we reference back to our Nasus 0 CS guide. He's about to give up a lot of CS, but thal knows very well that the most important thing in the early game is the experience. Right now, he's probably totally okay with going down like 50 CS in this sort of matchup. He just does his best to stay within experience range the entire time, which is the best that he can hope for and will allow him to come back into the game later on. If thal were to lose his mind, as many of us do, and die for some last hits, well, we all know how that goes. Once you're down in experience, lane phase quickly becomes impossible to play. After collecting the odd last hit and continuing to soak experience, thal moves towards the tri-brush to get a control ward down. Can you tell us why placing this ward at this moment is so valuable? Well, right now Sett's goal should be to crash the wave into Kalista's tower so it pushes back into him. This freeze Kalista has going on him is making it very difficult to farm. If Kalista were to go try to clear this ward, it'd give thal free time in the lane to fully crash the wave. This is why thal doesn't even bother clearing the ward that Kalista had down. He knows she can't leave lane at the moment anyway. Not only that, but now she has to play much more carefully, having to be wary of Elise ganks, which is going to give thal breathing room to take more control of the wave. These types of windows are something that you should always look out for in these ranged matchups. Remember, the ranged player has to play very aggressively to get value out of their pick. It takes a lot of skill to constantly evade ganks while playing forward in the lane. Vision is obviously the biggest way that they can accomplish this. Even if your jungler is on the other side of the map, think about how your opponent is probably feeling when you go to clear their vision. They might be super afraid and may concede lane control to you. Alright, jumping back into the lane, thal is once again going to chill pretty far back until the next wave crashes. Once again, let's pause. If you were thal, what should be going through your mind right now? Remember, as the melee champion, we're saving our health for pivotal moments like these. With a full health bar, thal can probably ignore Kalista enough to fully crash this wave, allowing him to reset. This challenger Kalista definitely knows this, so she pushes up immediately to defend her freeze. Thal adapts and looks to fight with his minion lead. Things might have worked out for him had he E'd her correctly into this larger wave. Unfortunately, his mis-execution gets him heavily punished. This was a great forced error from the Kalista, and she's now protected her freeze. And thal no longer has the health to brute force the wave into the enemy tower, earning Kalista the envious opportunity to checkmate the lane with an unbreakable freeze. So, what should thal do now? Well, he should get more health. He pops a potion and knows honey fruit spawns somewhere between 6 and 6.5 minutes, so he wisely enters the river, clears some vision, and heals up. What he does next is super smart and allows him to break the freeze with a risk-free mind game. He walks up and simply soaks experience from this brush. Kalista, thinking that he likely recalled, starts pushing, getting thal in the position that he wanted to be in all along. The true brilliance of this play was that even if Kalista stuck to her guns and executed the freeze, thal would still safely soak experience from here, which is what he's been doing since the start of the lane anyway. He then eventually reveals himself and finally starts picking up some last hits for his troubles. The lane carries on in much the same way, and Kalista eventually ends up taking her own recall, allowing thal to do the same after resetting the wave. He went back to base down 38 CS. We understand how that can feel very frustrating in the middle of the game, but relaxing and realizing that it's not a big deal is why thal was able to survive this laning phase. Look at the actual items that they bought. If you saw this in game, would you even be worried? Probably not. He's only down like a Doran's Blade worth of lane power or something like that. He also made sure to rush Ninja Tabby, as we always recommend to do versus physical damage ranged top laners. The damage reduction not only helps survive the lane, but the movement speed is perfect for setting up ganks to punish your opponents for overextending. After nearly 8 minutes of agony, thal and his jungler finally managed to punish Kalista and take her down easily. After, a random fight at Herald occurs and thal along with his winning team scores some kills. Now the laning phase becomes much easier. Kalista without flash gets ganked again, and thal's team moves to an easy victory after that. We're not making an effort to hide that thal's team did really do well this game and that he probably got carried a bit, but that was his job. He almost certainly picked top lane blind in champion select and picked a safe champion like Sett who can survive a lot of matchups. Then, he displayed a masterclass of the fundamentals that we've discussed in these matchups, which anyone can do with practice alongside some fancy rank 1 moves. We must acknowledge that Kalista was also playing incredibly well and was punishing him hard. As you climb, surviving gets harder and harder, which is why it's so important to master the fundamentals of surviving. The fundamentals are what don't ever change. Professional players are playing an entirely different game from you. You likely don't have to play as safe as thal did. He knew his win condition was to wait for his intelligent jungler to find a gank timing onto top. Smurf players like Hector, on the other hand, could just prey on one of the countless mistakes that low elo players make without needing assistance. The link between both elos though is that they're always trying to keep their health bars high. The only thing that changes is how they punish the opponents. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. If you love real guides that truly help you improve, then we highly recommend you check out our new skillcapped channel for Valorant guides. There, you'll find the premium guides that you've come to expect from us, but for Riot's new tactical FPS game, Valorant. It's one of the best ways to show your love and support, so click the link in the description below, check it out, and make sure to subscribe.